Hi, Jeremy Young, founder of Atomos. Got some big news for you. First of all, we're 10 years old. So come to our website, have a look at how we're celebrating the 10-year anniversary. And as part of that milestone for Atomos, we've been beavering away on the next generation of products, looking at how they affect COVID-related workflows as well as the traditional workflow. So the first cab off the rank is a new Ninja 5. We call it Ninja 5 Plus, and we're very proud to deliver it in an online event to show you who's using it, how they're using it. We've been in development for quite some time. Grab your camera. If it's a 4K120 capable, we've got a couple of partners launching with us. The next one will be Sony. And from there, you guys can learn from the influences of those companies and from our team showing you how to use this amazing product. In our online launch event, there's a real revolution in video, as Atomos likes to do. 8K ProRes RAW is here on Ninja 5 Plus, 4K120 slow motion in 4K to add into all your great productions.
Hello and welcome to the Atomos Ninja 5 Plus online event. I'm James Weatherby. You've already heard from Atomos founder Jeremy Young. I'm also going to be joined by cinematographer Matt Wood. Matt Wood ACS has been working in the film and TV industry for over 20 years. Having gained recognition for his early film projects, Matt's career path was clearly destined for cinematography. Over the years, Matt's work has been continued to be both acknowledged and celebrated, with awards from all across the world, culminating in him receiving his accreditation from the Australian Cinematographers Society in 2019. I'm also joined by Atomos Chief Technical Officer, Trevor Elborn, who will be able to provide technical knowledge of the ins and outs of these new products. We're here today to introduce the new Ninja 5 Plus Pro Kit, which is the newest member of the Ninja 5 lineup and joins the original Ninja 5. But before we speak to our guests, let's have a look at some of the footage Matt Wood has shot with the recently announced Ninja 5 Plus with Sony's FX6 and FX9.
My name is Matt Wood. I am a cinematographer based in Melbourne, Australia. I was lucky enough to be approached by Atomos to be one of the very first to test out the Ninja 5 Plus Pro kit that unleashes ProRes RAW at 120 frames per second in 4K when combined with Sony FX6 and FX9. This really was an amazing opportunity to test out this groundbreaking technology and to see how it would really open up the capabilities of both cameras. So our concept of using dancers and a lot of movement for this project really seemed like a great way of putting this camera system through its paces. When you boil it all down, a cinematographer generally is looking for three things in any camera system. 1, natural skin tones. 2, the camera's ability to capture movement organically, like film. And 3, true and vibrant colours. This tight-knit unit really allowed me to downsize on this project and really made use of the internal features of the Ninja 5 Plus Pro Kit and Sony FX6 combo, especially as I wanted to see how the face priority autofocus on the FX6 performed at 120 frames per second. This is why I decided to shoot over multiple days. I really wanted drastically different locations with wildly different weather and lighting conditions, from dark and contrasty sunsets to indoor artificial lighting to bright harsh sunlight through forest trees. We were lucky enough to have both the FX6 and the FX9 camera systems on this project, as they were a great combo for all the varying locations. Also the fact that the FX6 can be mounted easily in a lightweight gimbal. This allowed us to really dedicate the FX6 to a high-impact, fast movement shots. Then the FX9 could sit back on a tripod and picking off long lens detailed shots like hands, feet and faces. I really wanted to feel free of mechanical and technical restraints and instead think creatively and artistically and allow me to really concentrate and engage more with the dancers. It was a wonderful experience shooting 120 frames a second in 4K. It allows you to capture the unseen at the highest quality, all of those micro expressions, movements and subtleties. With our exterior locations, I was determined to shoot with nothing but natural light. I was shooting at 120 frames per second and really needed to make sure I had enough light. So I really relied heavily on the high sensitivity ISO of the FX6, which has the ability to push to an eye-watering 12,800 ISO. Having worked with ProRes RAW before, I knew how dynamic it was and how much latitude it could give me. But now seeing it in 4K at 120 frames per second, it was really mind-blowing. When I first started playing back directly from the Ninja 5 Plus monitor at 120 frames per second, I was pleasantly surprised to see how well the image quality held together, and I could see exactly how it was going to transfer over to the edit and the grade. And now to be able to monitor in PQ meant that I was able to see the full dynamic range of the camera. What I love about ProRes RAW is that the files can be brought straight into a timeline and can play back multiple clips without dropping frames. To me, it always comes back to the benefits of less time spent in the mechanical and laborious tasks and more time spent on the creative. All in all, this complete setup allowed me to have the highest quality look and feel, and all from a cost-effective small compact rig. Once you've shot in this way, why would you ever look back?
Wow, that was absolutely gorgeous. You can really see the dynamic range in those stunning backdrops. The incredible detail is still noticeable at 120 frames, and the detail you were able to capture especially lends itself to the fluid motion of dance. But before we dive into the idea behind the video, I'd like to chat to Trevor Elborn to elaborate on the technology itself and the reasons why Atomos has been able to introduce 4K at 120p and other new features. Trevor, could you tell us a little bit more about the technology behind the Ninja 5 Plus and the Atomos SDI module?
Absolutely. Ninja 5 Plus is an evolution of Ninja 5. So the groundwork for Ninja 5 Plus was actually laid several years ago when we designed the original Ninja 5. And what we thought back then was we wanted to have the flexibility and capability to upgrade and add new features when they became available from the camera makers. And we wanted to really unlock that capability inside the Ninja to deliver those features for creatives like Matt. So we upgraded the core processing unit inside the Ninja 5, which is really the brains of the unit, to the next generation of that chip. And that unlocks the capability to deliver high frame rate 4K. And the flexibility of the RAW codec, the ProRes RAW codec inside, allowed us also to do that quite easily. And in particular with the SDI module, it gave us the connectivity to connect to new cameras like the FX9 and the FX6 at that high frame rate 4K in pristine quality.
Thanks for that, Trevor. Could you maybe tell us a little bit more about your experience in collaborating with Sony?
Yeah, absolutely. Sony have been a partner of Atomos for a long period of time, and we've done a lot of projects with Sony. In fact, they were one of our first collaborators when we first did RAW on some of our earlier products. So they were really interested in being involved. And when we learned that they had a new camera coming out that could do 4K120, we were very keen to work with them and understand whether or not they'd be interested in working on this project. Right from the start, they were very keen, very supportive, gave us all the necessary support we needed to deliver this amazing outcome.
Thanks, Trevor. It's so great to hear about what goes into these amazing devices. Now let's talk with Matt about how the new Ninja 5 Plus Pro kit has enabled him to capture such beautiful content when paired with Sony's FX6 and FX9. So Matt, what is the idea behind the video and what inspired you to choose it?
I've always been really inspired by dance just as an aesthetic, because I've always been kind of intrigued about what it actually is. As children, we hear music, we dance. We don't think about it. We don't care what people think of us when we're doing it. We just do it. And so I've always been kind of intrigued by those who continue doing it into adulthood, and I've always wanted to work with dancers because it's just not part of my DNA. What they can seem to be able to just keep letting go and not be worried about what other people think of them. And then with the 120 frames per second, really sort of understanding how that works, I thought this would be the perfect project to really explore movement in itself, dance as well, but like more about movement as a human as well. And you know, this is, I think it was a wonderful project. I mean, we were able to do whatever we wanted, and we wanted to really explore different locations, different movement of dancers, and yeah, that's pretty much where the idea kind of spawned from.
It's hard not to notice the beautiful sunsets and skies. Is there a reason why you chose to shoot at this specific time of day?
Yeah, I mean, magic hour has always been well regarded as sort of like the most cinematic time of the day to shoot. But it was also just on a technical reason. It was just like, one, I was really interested to see how skies looked at 120 frames per second, because that's one of the drawbacks to higher frame rates is often you lose quality. And with this raw recording, I really wanted to show all the different colors in those skies. But it was also, I was sort of interested to see how the Sony Atomos collaboration would work with the Ninja 5. I was sort of interested to see what the dual ISO. So I was thinking if we shot when the sun was completely up and we had enough light, we'd shoot in the 800 ISO range. And then once we started to lose that light, and once we started to get into magic hour, which is when the sun actually goes behind the horizon, I really wanted to see what it would look like when we pushed it to the second ISO, and so we tried to get that balance between low noise and then with the higher ISO thing. And I was shocked by how far we could push this, because the ProRes RAW codec is so solid. It really did hold up, and it looked really amazing. Like the colors still held. Everything was really amazing. At 120 frames, you're also losing so much light. I wanted to see how far I can push it.
It really is a beautiful time of day. Do you have a favorite part of the video, a favorite section?
Yeah, I do. I mean, each section I have obviously it's like saying a favorite child. Sort of each section I have my favorite little bits, of course, and each dancer just brought something incredible to each part. But on a personal thing, there's this amazing forest we have here. It's called R.J. Hammer Arboretum, and it's got these amazing deciduous trees. And in autumn, they all just turn to yellow and reds, and the different color, and the forest just comes alive with different color. But it really is only around for 2 to 3 weeks, if you're lucky. And I've been trying to get this on film since probably almost 20 years. And when we first got there, I was just hoping the leaves were still there, because if you get one big wind, the leaves are gone. And then as we actually were pulling up, I noticed the leaves were still there. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then, but the cloud cover was just, and we had a weather report of just rain, rain, rain. And I knew how amazing those leaves looked in sun. But when it's overcast, they kind of look a bit drab. And then as we're sort of pulling up, and I was just sort of like, okay, we're just going to shoot in the dreary grey skies. And then just as that happened, the sun just beamed through. and the forest just came alive, and it was like the leaves just caught on fire. And I was sitting there just going, oh my God, we've got a video at this point, because it's like all the leaves were so vivid. And then actually watching the footage off the Ninja 5 Pro, you could actually see it in the PQ mode. We could actually see what it was sort of going to look like. And we also knew we could actually have that right on the cusp of peaking. So you could really get the vibrancy of those leaves, because that is so hard to get on film. And yeah, and I don't know how it happened, and it wasn't in the weather report, but we got sun for a good almost 3 hours, and we just shot like crazy. With every angle we did, we just tried to use it as much as we could. And the colors just were mind-blowing, absolutely mind-blowing.
Sounds like an awesome day. Could you tell us a bit more about what it was like to shoot in ProRes RAW? And was this your first experience shooting RAW?
No, I was sort of lucky enough a few years ago to actually sort of beta test the ProRes RAW when it first sort of came out, just as sort of more of just sort of see how it would work on set. And we were sort of, at the time, it was hard to monitor it. It was hard to think, just because it was almost like the expression someone explained it to me. It was like trying to fill up a dog bowl with a fire hose. I mean, just trying to just capture, because there's just so much data coming off that monitor, off that sensor, that it's actually kind of hard to make an actual representation live on set. But it's evolved so much now that I mean, it really was almost a really easy process now. I kind of just almost forgot about the whole RAW thing on set. And I was able, now that I can properly monitor it and sort of see it in a good color space, it really doesn't feel that much different on set to shooting any other, really any other codec. Yeah, it's really is a no-brainer to do it, I think.
So what was the post-production workflow like on this project?
Yeah, it was really surprisingly easy. I was expecting it to be trickier, because with other camera systems, you have to download certain software, priority software. Then you got to make all your decisions. Then you got to bake it out, and a lot of the time, I'm having arguments with producers or post companies, because it's so time consuming. And RAW is usually such a heavy wielding kind of thing. It really slows down your workflow, so a lot of people don't want to use it. But with this, it was real time. We didn't have to download really any software. We used our regular editing systems. We didn't use really any more powerful computer than any other thing. So yeah, to be honest, it was surprisingly easy, and we were almost effortlessly went into post. And we're doing dailies, and it was like nothing else like I've ever used before.
Well, it's really interesting to hear you say that, because one of the main aims when we were kind of working with Apple originally on ProRes RAW was to try to make the workflow as easy as traditional kind of workflows with other codecs, to strip away those barriers for people to think about using RAW, because ultimately, RAW is the truest expression of capturing everything from the sensor. And we wanted to give people the creative ability to do that and not have to think about, well, is this going to be too heavy in terms of workflow? Is my computer going to be able to cope? Is it going to be too tricky? As I say, stripping away all those barriers were really important in the design of the workflow process for ProRes RAW, to allow you to, as you say, not to have to think about it. Mm. We always thought that on Ninja 5 Plus, the combination of 4K and high frame rate would enable some interesting creative kind of options. Did you find that on this shoot?
Yeah, 100%. It was really great for this, because when I was trying to think of ideas that could actually sort of show 120 frames per second, it's kind of a hard one, because it's in this sort of like uncanny valley sort of frame rate. Like normally when we're on set, if we want someone to look a little bit more graceful, we might shoot 33 frames. If we want to do the slow motion walking away from explosion, it's usually like 50 frames. So in 120 frames is quite an extreme high frame rate. It's really slow. So you need to actually have, it's hard to even gauge it when you're on set, because you need to really get movement big, and you need to go fast, because it is 5 times slower than normal. And I was trying to think of what things we could really do it and really test the boundaries of this camera. And the one thing that's always been really important to me, and I think any filmmaker, is sure, it can go 120 frames, but what does it look like at 120 frames? Because there's a lot of camera systems out there that once they get to a higher frame rate, they just fall apart. Like colors just look awful. Skin tones, which is, you could say, is the most important thing with any camera system, just fall apart. And then you're in such a high compression that it looks awful. So I thought, well, what we could do with this is actually, just focus on body movement. So then we also know our motion cadence is good. Also just to have a variety of skin tones and see how the camera really picks up skin tone, because that is so fundamentally important to any kind of cinematography. And then also with lots of environments, like all the different colors we tried to use, like we tried to give each location its own color, like blue or red or things, and just sort of see how the video works at those high frame rates. And so when I sort of really started to deeply think about it, it was actually, it was the first time I actually saw slow motion actually as good or almost as good or perceivably as good as when I'm shooting at 24 frames. I didn't seem to lose much when I went into 120 frames. So we kind of went, all right, well, if we're going to do it, let's just do it only. And I think that was only one shot, which is the drone shot, that's not at 120 frames per second. But we kept shooting just to test to see if there is any loss. And it seemed to really, by the eye, it was, the colors were true, everything was true, and I was absolutely mind blown, because I'm sure, I don't know if I know a camera system that seems to be able to do it, except for this one. So that was a real eye opener to me, and I'm really grateful to even be able to test it. So.
Were there any other features on Ninja 5 Plus that were helpful during the shoot?
Where do I start? I mean, just one of the main ones, which I think a lot of people don't actually think about, but it's really important as when you're operating cameras, is actually just the size. Actually, I've got a Shogun and some other larger ones, which are great too, but the size just means, because this is to live on a camera, it's not a director's viewfinder, it's actually to live on the camera. The fact that it's actually small enough to fit anyone who shoots inside a car, traveling shot, or in sort of cramped conditions, you just need something compact and small. The other thing that was really handy for me, and just because I'm still learning, I'm only new to the sort of Sony camera systems, is actually just the fact that I can do false color, and also what is it called, PQ, the monitoring system, yeah. Because even though, like, I do like zebras, and I always, exposing faces is supposed to be in the 70 range or what have you, but for me, I need to know what I'm losing, and like, if I'm deciding to do a silhouette shot, I need to know that, yes, I can expose down and lose the person for a silhouette. Or if I'm shooting a sunset, I know I'm not going to get the sun, like you're not going to expose for the actual direct sun, but you want to know how much of the sky you're losing. And so false color for me in the PQ mode, so therefore I could actually see it, at least a representation of what I was losing. That was, I wouldn't even know how to do it without it, to be honest. That was so integral to the exposing of the camera for me. Yeah, especially 120 frames per second, it's really hard to gauge how fast or how slow motion that is. So being able to play it back in slow motion was really important. So me and the dancers could actually review the shots and actually see it in 120 frames. Because I think on set, especially when you've got music that's sort of a bit slow and your tendency is to sort of slow down, and then you end up, rather than having something that's engaging and dynamic and interesting, you end up with these sort of quite boring shots. So for us, I could actually, rather than try and explain it to the dancer or the camera, the crane or whatever, we knew we just had to keep on top of it. So the more we reviewed it, the faster we realized we needed to keep on top of it to keep it engaging. And it was just so easy to navigate through to the shots as well. Like, also just working out if going back to old scenes or whatever, we could just really, without really too much complication, just go pop back and forth. And yeah, that was really important.
The form factor of professional cameras has been shrinking over the years. Did you find that beneficial on this shoot?
Yeah, I mean, we had the FX9 and the FX6 on the shoot, and the FX6 it's really it's tiny. I mean, it's really small, and so we actually decided that could be our gimbal camera, and then the FX9 could be our kind of more of our handheld shoulder mount sort of camera. And because we're on just a small gimbal, the form factor of this is really great because it's nice, small, kind of works in that sort of thing. So, and also when we took it up in the drone, we obviously, because we wanted to record that in RAW, so we actually mounted that just to the back of the Movi on it with a clamp, and it's amazing. And I think with just being able to move freely, because when I started, the film cameras we used to use were like sometimes up at like 50 kilo to move those things around. And even though I do miss film, I don't miss lugging gear up hills and those things were literally made out of metal. They were so heavy and so big, you needed a team of people just to move the frickin' things. I don't think that size really makes too much of a difference to the way you're approaching, but the possibilities of the way you can approach a film. Like with this one, because we wanted to move so much, and we wanted to leave a small footprint because we're in like very natural nature reserves. We didn't want to bring in track, and we didn't want to bring in like really heavy equipment that could actually ruin the environment. So having it nice and small was really great. And you know, we also had like these cameras are so powerful with things like autofocus and all these other things that sort of help out. You can sort of reduce your footprint a lot when you're working in these environments. And I think it's just you can start telling stories that maybe you couldn't do in the past.
We know you're a long-time user of Atomos products. How have you seen them evolve over the years?
Yeah, I mean, they've always been really good to me. I've always really, like everything, I mean, my slo-mo is almost like the go-to. I think I've had that on every shoot I've done since I've got it. And then just the ecosystem's been really good all the way through. Then with the Pro Kit, the SDIN to do RAW, I mean, obviously that's just so ahead of its time. Like it's almost weird. I can't imagine going onto a shoot without it now. What I've always liked about Atomos is you guys always seem to have like really nice bright screens that I can see in daylight. Like it doesn't matter how good a monitor is, if I can't see it when I'm outside, it's no good to me. And it's been always good that this is carried on through these ones. The Ninja 5 Pro is nice and bright, so I can see it in daylight. And then if I'm in extreme sun, then there is the sun hood. That's been really good, handy to have when we did need it. But yeah, besides that, I mean, Atomos has always been quite good with taking feedback from the actual users as well. I feel like a lot of other companies, they'll ask you feedback just to sort of, I don't know, to get a sound grab, but then they don't end up taking on anything they've suggested. But every time I've sort of even suggested anything, and friends of mine have suggested anything to Atomos, the next generation, just all of those problems are fixed, and it's a whole new thing. And it's always been really solid to me. So I've always been a big fan.
Well, thank you to everyone here. It's been great to be able to discuss the Ninja 5 Plus Pro Kit and its capabilities when paired with Sony's FX6 and FX9. Thank you everyone for joining us. You'll be able to watch Matt's video and the behind the scenes on the Atomos YouTube channel. And for more content like this, head over to Atomos Academy. Thank you and goodbye.